Imagine an empire so powerful that Egypt feared it. An empire that invented iron weapons while others still fought with bronze. An empire that wrote the world's first peace treaty, that challenged pharaohs, that ruled from a mountain fortress so remote that when it fell, the world forgot it ever existed. For 3,000 years, the Hittites were a mystery, mentioned in the Bible, but nowhere else. Scholars thought they were mythical. Archaeologists dismissed them as fiction. Then, in 1906, a German archaeologist found something in the Turkish highlands. Clay tablets, thousands of them, written in a language no one could read. And slowly, painstakingly, the lost civilization emerged from the silence. Tonight, you'll hear their whole story. From a king who stole a throne to an empire that vanished in a single generation. Close your eyes. Relax. Let me take you back 3,500 years to a world we almost never knew existed. Chapter 1. The Mountain Fortress. The year is 1650 BCE. High in the mountains of central Anatolia, what is now Turkey, a city rises from the rocky plateau. Its walls are massive, built from cyclopean stones that seem impossible to move. The city is called Hattusa, and it sits in the most unlikely place for a capital you can imagine. No major river runs through it. No fertile valley surrounds it. The winters are brutal. Snow piles high. Winds howl through the mountain passes. Why build a capital here? Because sometimes defense matters more than comfort. Hattusa sits at the crossroads of trade routes, protected by mountains on all sides. Any army that wants to attack must climb narrow passes where defenders have every advantage. It is a fortress. It is a statement. It says, we are not like other kingdoms. We do not need rivers or valleys. We are strong enough to thrive where others would perish. But the story does not begin in Hattusa. It begins with a man named Hattusili. He is not born to be king. He is a general, ambitious and ruthless, serving a king he secretly despises. And one day, he decides to take what he believes should be his. Chapter 2. The Throne Stealer. The exact details are lost to time. But the records that survive tell us this. Hattusili seizes the throne around 1650 BCE, whether through military coup, political maneuvering, or outright murder, we do not know. What we do know is that he immediately moves the capital to Hattusa, perhaps to distance himself from the old power centers, perhaps because he needs a fortress he can defend against enemies who want revenge. He crowns himself king of Hattusa, not yet great king, not yet emperor, just a strong man who seized power and now must prove he deserves to keep it, and prove it he does. Hattusili is a warrior. He leads his army south into Syria, attacking the wealthy trading cities that control the routes to Mesopotamia. He is also brutal. When a city resists, he destroys it completely. When a people rebel, he deports entire populations, scattering them across his growing kingdom where they can never unite against him. This is not cruelty for its own sake. This is strategy. Hattusili understands something fundamental about power. Fear works where love fails. But even the strongest kings grow old. As Hattusili ages, he faces the problem that will haunt the Hittite Empire for centuries. Succession. He has sons, but his sons are weak, unworthy, or so he believes. He has a grandson named Mersili. The boy is young, perhaps only 15, but he shows promise. He is fierce, intelligent, loyal. Hattusili makes a decision that will echo through Hittite history. He He bypasses his own sons and names his grandson as heir. The sons are furious. The court is divided, but Hattusili does not care. He gathers his nobles and makes a speech that survives in fragmentary form on clay tablets. I, Hattusili, have made Mursili my heir. Whoever disobeys him, whoever plots against him, let that man's house be destroyed. Let his line be ended. It is a warning, it is a curse, and it will not be enough. Chapter 3. The Boy King's Revenge. Hattusili dies around 1620 BCE. Mursili I takes the throne as a teenager, surrounded by uncles and cousins who believe they should rule, by nobles who think they can control this boy king. They are wrong. Mursili does something that stuns the ancient world. He marches his army south, not to nearby Syria. Everyone expects that, but all the way to Babylon. Babylon, the greatest city in Mesopotamia, protected by walls 30 feet thick, defended by the armies of one of the world's most powerful kingdoms. Mursili attacks it, and he wins. The raid on Babylon in 1595 BCE becomes legendary. Mursili's forces storm the city, plunder its temples, carry away treasures that would make his kingdom wealthy for generations. They overthrow the dynasty that has ruled Babylon for 3 centuries. Then just as quickly, they leave. Mursili does not try to hold Babylon. He is not building an empire of occupation. He is sending a message. The Hittites can strike anywhere. No city is safe. No king is secure. He returns to Hattusa in triumph, his reputation secured. At age 20, he has accomplished what seemed impossible. He has proven that Hattusili's choice was right, that he deserves the throne. But success makes enemies, especially when those enemies are your own family. Mursili's brother-in-law, a man named Hantili, watches the young king's triumph with envy. Hantili thinks, I helped raise this boy. I advised him. I am older, more experienced. Why should he have all the glory? And slowly, carefully, Hantili begins to plot. He gathers allies among the disgruntled nobles. He whispers to Mursili's passed-over uncles. He waits for the right moment. And one night, in the palace at Hattusa, assassins enter the king's chambers. Mursili I, conqueror of Babylon, dies in his own bed. He is perhaps 25 years old. The throne stealer's grandson has been murdered by his own brother-in-law. The curse has begun. Chapter 4. The Dark Century. What follows is chaos. Hantili takes the throne, but he rules through murder and fear. His own sons plot against him. His reign is marked by rebellion and instability. When Hantili dies, possibly murdered by his own family, his son takes the throne and is immediately murdered by his brother-in-law. The pattern repeats. Brother kills brother. Uncle overthrows nephew. Brother-in-law assassinates brother-in-law. For nearly a century, the Hittite throne is soaked in family blood. Meanwhile, the empire contracts. The subject peoples, seeing weakness at the center, rebel. The territories Hattusili conquered break away. The trade routes are lost. Hattusa itself is attacked multiple times. The mountain fortress that seemed impregnable is besieged, damaged, nearly captured. The Hittite Empire, which seemed poised to dominate the ancient Near East, teeters on the edge of collapse. But empires are resilient things. In the chaos, someone always emerges who is stronger, more ruthless, more determined than the rest. For the Hittites, that someone is named Tudhaliya. Chapter 5. The Restorer. Tudhaliya I takes the throne around 1430 BCE, and he faces a catastrophe. Enemies press in from all sides. The kingdom has shrunk to barely more than the heartland around Hattusa. The army is depleted, the treasury is empty, but Tudaliya has something the recent kings lacked: patience. He does not try to reconquer everything at once. Instead, he consolidates. He rebuilds the army. He repairs relationships with neighboring kingdoms through diplomacy and marriage alliances. He fights when he must, but only when he is certain of victory. Slowly, painfully, the Hittite kingdom stabilizes. But Tudaliya's greatest contribution is not military, it is legal. He begins to codify Hittite law, writing down the customs and judgments that have been passed orally for generations. The surviving law code is fascinating. It reveals a society far more sophisticated than we might expect. Yes, there are brutal punishments, but there is also nuance, an attempt at proportional justice. If you kill someone's slave, you must replace the slave, not with death, but with compensation. If you injure someone, you pay a fine proportional to the injury. The code even specifies different fines for different body parts. Theft is punished not with mutilation, but with restitution, often many times the value of what was stolen. And here is the remarkable part. The law applies to everyone, even nobles, even in some cases, the king himself. This is revolutionary for the Bronze Age. Tudaliya's grandson, Tudaliya II, continues the restoration. He reconquers lost territories. He intimidates neighbors. He restores Hittite prestige. But he also knows the empire needs more than just military power. It needs allies. It needs legitimacy. And that means confronting the greatest power in the ancient world, Egypt. Chapter 6. The Two Suns Collide. Egypt in the 15th century BCE is at its zenith. Under pharaohs like Thutmose III, Egypt has built an empire stretching from Nubia to Syria. Egyptian armies are the best in the world. Egyptian wealth is legendary. The pharaohs call themselves the sun, the living god on earth. And now the Hittites, these mountain people, these throne stealers, these barely known northerners, dare to challenge them. The conflict begins over Syria. Syria is the bridge between Anatolia and Egypt, between the Hittite north and the Egyptian south. It is wealthy, strategically vital, and coveted by both empires. For decades, Egypt has dominated Syria. The local kings pay tribute to Pharaoh. Egyptian garrisons protect Egyptian interests. But as the Hittites grow stronger, the Syrian kings begin to calculate, who is the real power? Who should we fear more? Around 1350 BCE, a Hittite king named Suppiluliuma I comes to power. He is one of the greatest kings in Hittite history, brilliant general, cunning diplomat, patient strategist. And he has a plan. Suppiluliuma does not simply invade Syria with brute force. Instead, he waits for the right moment. He builds alliances with Syrian kings dissatisfied with Egyptian rule. He promises them protection, lower tribute, more autonomy. And when Egypt is distracted by internal problems, a pharaoh named Akhenaten, who is more interested in religious revolution than military affairs, Suppiluliuma strikes. His armies sweep through Syria like a storm. City after city switches allegiance. Egyptian garrisons are expelled or massacred. Within a few years, almost all of Syria is under Hittite control. Egypt is shocked, humiliated. The southern sun has been eclipsed by the northern mountain king. But then, something extraordinary happens. Something that shows just how far the Hittites have risen. Chapter 7. The Egyptian Queen's Letter. Pharaoh Tutankhamun dies suddenly in 1323 BCE. He is young, only 18 or 19, and he leaves no heir. His widow, Queen Ankhesenamun, faces a terrible choice. According to Egyptian custom, she must marry whoever becomes the next pharaoh. That man is I, the elderly advisor who likely arranged Tutankhamun's death. The thought of marrying her husband's murderer fills her with horror. So she does something unprecedented. She writes to the enemy. The letter arrives at Hattusa, addressed to Suppiluliuma I. "My husband has died," she writes. "I have no son. I am told you have many sons. Send me one of your sons, and I will make him my husband. He will be king of Egypt." Suppiluliuma reads the letter and cannot believe it. He sends an envoy to Egypt to verify this is not a trap. The envoy returns, confirming. Yes, the Egyptian queen truly offers the throne to a Hittite prince. Imagine the scene. The Hittite king, in his mountain fortress, holding a letter offering him control of Egypt, the wealthiest, most powerful kingdom in the world. All he has to do is send a son. He chooses Zananza, one of his younger sons. The prince departs for Egypt with a small escort, riding south through Syria toward the Nile. And he never arrives. Somewhere on the border, Egyptian forces, probably sent by Ai, ambush and murder Zananza. The queen's plan fails. Ai forces her to marry him and becomes pharaoh. And Suppiluliuma, when he learns his son has been murdered, is consumed with rage. He launches a massive invasion of Egyptian territory. His armies ravage Egyptian holdings in Syria. They capture prisoners. They burn crops. But something unexpected happens. The Egyptian prisoners carry a plague. The plague spreads through the Hittite army, then through Syria, then back to Anatolia. It reaches Hattusa itself. And Suppiluliuma I, the greatest Hittite king, dies of the plague brought back from his war of revenge. His son and successor, Arnawanda II, dies within a year, also from plague. The disease that will be called the Hittite plague ravages the empire for 20 years. Entire regions are depopulated. The army is decimated. The empire staggers. Once again, the Hittites face potential collapse. Chapter 8. The Warrior Prince. A new king takes the throne in 1321 BCE. His name is Ramesses II, named after the great conqueror, hoping to inherit his ancestors' strength. He is young, perhaps only 20, and he inherits an empire in crisis. The plague still rages. Vassal kingdoms rebel, seeing Hittite weakness. Enemies press in from all sides. Ramesses II does something that reveals both his humanity and his desperation. He prays. The clay tablets preserve his prayers. Anguished, desperate pleas to the storm god and the sun goddess. Why does the plague continue? What sin has brought this curse? My father conquered Egypt's territory. Was this wrong? He killed Zananza's murderers. Was this unjust? He performs ritual after ritual, sacrifice after sacrifice, and whether through divine intervention or simple epidemiological reality, the plague finally ends. Ramesses II emerges from his grief and fear transformed. He becomes one of the most active military commanders in Hittite history, campaigning nearly every year for 2 decades. He reconquers rebel territories. He defeats enemies. He restores Hittite power. But he also does something remarkable. He keeps detailed annals of his campaigns, year by year. These annals survive, and they give us an intimate portrait of this warrior king. We see him struggle with self-doubt. We see him suffer a speech impediment, possibly from stress or trauma, that temporarily leaves him unable to speak clearly. We see him deal with family betrayal when one of his brothers rebels. We see him age from uncertain youth to confident emperor. By the time of his death, around 1295 BCE, Ramesses II has restored the empire to its former glory, but he leaves behind a problem that will define the next generation. two capable sons, both believing they deserve the throne. Chapter 9. The Battle of Brothers. The elder son, Muwatalli II, takes the throne when Mursili II dies. The younger son, Hattusili, commands the northern armies. He is popular with the troops, successful in battle, ambitious. Muwatalli sees the danger. But rather than killing his brother, which would risk civil war, Muwatalli does something clever. He gives Hattusili enormous power in the north, making him virtually an independent king within the empire. He allows him glory, wealth, authority. But he keeps the ultimate power for himself. It is a gamble. It keeps peace, for now. Meanwhile, Egypt has its own new pharaoh. Ramesses II takes the throne in 1279 BCE, young and ambitious. He looks north at Syria and sees provinces that should be Egyptian. The collision between the Hittite and Egyptian empires is inevitable. Chapter 10. Kadesh. The year is 1274 BCE. Two great armies march toward a city called Kadesh in Syria. Leading the Egyptian forces, Ramesses II, with perhaps 20,000 men, including the finest chariot corps in the world. Leading the Hittite forces, Muwatalli II, with a massive army, possibly 30,000 or more, including allied forces from across Anatolia and Syria. This will be the largest chariot battle in history. Ramesses advances with confidence, perhaps overconfidence. His army is divided into 4 divisions, each named after an Egyptian god. Ramesses himself leads the division of Amun, marching ahead of the others. Hittite scouts, captured by the Egyptians, tell Ramesses that the main Hittite army is far away, near Aleppo, still preparing. It is a lie. The Hittite army is hidden just beyond the city of Kadesh, as Ramesses' division makes camp. Believing they have time to rest and wait for the other divisions, Muwatalli launches his attack. 2,500 Hittite chariots, heavier than Egyptian chariots, carrying 3 men instead of 2, crash into the Egyptian division of Ra, which is still marching toward the camp. The Egyptian division collapses. Men flee in terror. Chariots overturn. Chaos spreads. The Hittite chariots surge forward into Ramesses' camp itself. The pharaoh finds himself surrounded, cut off from most of his army, facing potential capture or death. What happens next, according to Egyptian sources, is miraculous. Ramesses, so the Egyptian accounts claim, fights like a god. Surrounded by enemies, he single-handedly rallies his guard, charges into the Hittite chariots, and fights his way free. He is personally saved by the arrival of a force of Ne'arin, mercenaries who arrive just in time to rescue the pharaoh. The battle swings back and forth all day. Thousands die. The dust and smoke are so thick that soldiers can barely see. By evening, both sides are exhausted. Ramesses has survived, but lost heavily. Muwatalli has inflicted terrible damage but failed to capture the pharaoh. Neither side has clearly won. As night falls, both armies withdraw. But here is where the story becomes fascinating. Ramesses returns to Egypt and declares total victory. He has temples carved with images of him triumphing at Kadesh, texts describing his personal heroism, claims that he defeated the Hittites single-handedly. The Hittite records say they won, driving the Egyptians from the field. Modern historians, reading both accounts, conclude it was probably a draw, with the Hittites having a slight tactical advantage, but the strategic result is clear. Neither empire can destroy the other. Neither can afford to keep fighting these massive, expensive, indecisive battles. They will fight for another 15 years, skirmish after skirmish, achieving nothing. And eventually, they will realize something revolutionary. Peace is more valuable than victory. Chapter 11. The Treaty. Muwatalli II dies in 1272 BCE. His son, Urhi-Teshub, takes the throne. But remember that ambitious younger brother, Hattusili. He has not forgotten his claim to power. For 7 years, Urhi-Teshub rules, while Hattusili commands the northern provinces. The tension builds. Then, in 1265 BCE, Hattusili makes his move. He deposes his nephew in a coup, not killing him, but exiling him. He claims that the gods have chosen him, that Urhi-Teshub was unworthy. He becomes Hattusili III. It is the same name as the founder. It is a statement. But Hattusili III has a problem. His legitimacy is questionable. He is a usurper, no matter how he justifies it. He needs something to legitimize his rule, to show that he is a great king worthy of the throne. He finds it in an unexpected place. Peace with Egypt. Ramesses II is now old, in his 50s. He has spent decades fighting the Hittites with nothing to show for it but exhaustion. His kingdom needs peace. His people need relief from constant warfare. And Hattusili III, the usurper who needs legitimacy, sends him an offer, a treaty. The negotiations take years. Every word must be carefully chosen. Every clause must satisfy both sides' honor. Neither empire can appear weak. But finally, in 1259 BCE, the treaty is complete. It is inscribed on silver tablets, one for Egypt, one for Hatti. Copies are carved in stone. The text is preserved in 2 languages, and it is remarkable. The Egyptian-Hittite peace treaty is the world's first surviving international peace treaty. It establishes a defensive alliance. If Egypt is attacked, Hatti will help, and vice versa. It provides for extradition of refugees. It guarantees the current borders. Most importantly, it treats both empires as equals. The pharaoh is not the overlord of the Hittite king. The Hittite king is not subordinate to the pharaoh. They are brothers, 2 sons sharing the sky. A copy of this treaty hangs in the United Nations building in New York today, a testament to humanity's ancient desire for peace. To seal the alliance, Hattusili sends his daughter to marry Ramesses. She travels to Egypt with an enormous dowry. Ramesses greets her with honors, renames her Ma-Thor-Neferur, she who sees Horus, the beauty of Ra. The 2 empires, after generations of war, become allies. And for a time, it works beautifully. Trade flourishes between Hatti and Egypt. Diplomatic correspondence flows. When Ramesses wants to build more temples, Hattusili sends him Hittite craftsmen. The ancient world enjoys a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity. Historians will call it the first Pax Internationalis, international peace. But like all golden ages, it is fragile. It rests on the strength of the empires that maintain it, and that strength is about to be tested. Chapter 12. The Iron Revolution. The Hittites possess a secret. In the mountains of Anatolia, they have discovered something that will change warfare forever. Iron. For centuries, the Bronze Age world has run on bronze, a mixture of copper and tin. It makes decent weapons, adequate tools, but bronze has weaknesses. It is expensive. Tin is rare, found in only a few places. Bronze weapons, while sharp, break or bend in hard combat. Iron is different. Raw iron ore is common in Anatolia. But for centuries, no one could figure out how to work it properly. The problem is temperature. Iron requires much hotter furnaces than bronze, around 1,500 degrees Celsius. Most Bronze Age furnaces cannot reach that heat. But the Hittites, through experimentation and luck, discover the technique. They build special furnaces. They add charcoal in precise amounts. They heat the iron ore until it becomes workable. The result is weapons and tools far superior to bronze. Iron swords do not break easily. Iron plow blades cut deeper. Iron tools last longer. The Hittites guard this secret jealously. They ban the export of iron weapons. They keep the smelting techniques within their own kingdom. Letters survive from foreign kings, begging Hattusa III to send them iron. One letter from an Assyrian king essentially says, "Please, just a little iron for a dagger. I need it urgently." Hattusili's reply is polite but firm. "We do not have good iron available right now." It is almost certainly a lie. The Hittites simply will not share their advantage, but secrets cannot be kept forever. When the Hittite Empire eventually falls, the iron-working knowledge will spread throughout the ancient world. The Bronze Age will end, the Iron Age will begin, and ironically, the Hittites' own innovation will be part of what destroys them. Chapter 13. The Queen Who Ruled. Hattusa III has a wife named Puduhepa. She is a princess from the Hurrian kingdom of Kizuwatna, married to Hattusa in a political alliance. But Puduhepa is no ordinary queen. She becomes one of the most powerful women in the ancient world. She corresponds directly with Ramesses II, not through her husband, but in her own name. She negotiates diplomatic agreements. She makes religious reforms. When foreign kings write to the Hittite court, they address letters to both Hattusa and Puduhepa, acknowledging her authority. This is extraordinary for the Bronze Age. Puduhepa is deeply religious, devoted to the sun goddess of Arina, the chief goddess of the Hittite pantheon. She reforms temple rituals. She commissions new religious texts. She ensures that the gods receive proper offerings and festivals. But her influence goes beyond religion. When Hattusili's health declines in his old age, Puduhepa effectively rules. She makes decisions, she handles crises, she maintains the empire's stability. Their son, Tudalia IV, grows up watching his mother wield power. When he takes the throne around 1237 BCE, after his father's death, he continues to honor his mother. She remains influential in court for years. But Tudalia IV faces challenges his parents never did. The world is changing, and not for the better. Chapter 14. The World Crisis. Around 1200 BCE, something catastrophic happens to the ancient world. We do not fully understand what or why, but the evidence is undeniable. Civilizations collapse, empires fall, cities burn. In Greece, the Mycenaean palaces are destroyed. Their literate civilization disappears overnight. In Anatolia, cities are abandoned or destroyed. Trade routes collapse. In the Levant, coastal cities burn. Even Egypt, though it survives, suffers terrible invasions and barely holds on. Modern historians call this the Bronze Age collapse. It is one of the most mysterious and devastating events in human history. The Egyptian records speak of sea peoples, mysterious invaders arriving by land and sea, destroying everything in their path. Some theories suggest climate change caused widespread famine, forcing mass migrations. Others point to systems collapse, when civilizations become so interconnected that one failure triggers cascading disasters. Perhaps it was all of these things. Perhaps it was something else entirely. What we know is that the Hittite Empire is right in the path of the storm. Tudalia IV sees the warnings. Grain shipments from Egypt mention famines. Reports arrive of cities destroyed. Refugees flee toward Hittite territory. He tries to prepare. He strengthens defenses. He stockpiles food. He sends desperate letters requesting grain from Egypt and Cyprus. One letter survives, painfully urgent. It is a matter of life and death. Send grain ships immediately! But preparation is not enough. Chapter 15. The Burning. We do not know exactly when or how Hattusa falls. The archaeological evidence shows fire. Massive, devastating fire. The palaces burn. The temples burn. The archives, thousands of clay tablets, are baked hard by the flames, which ironically preserves them for us to find 3,200 years later. But who burned it? Invaders? Rebels? The Hittites themselves in a desperate scorched earth retreat? We do not know. What we do know is that Hittite civilization does not just decline, it disappears. Within perhaps a single generation, the entire empire collapses. The cities are abandoned. The writing system is forgotten. The political structure evaporates. The last Hittite king, we do not even know his name for certain, vanishes from history. Some Hittites flee to Syria, establishing small Neo-Hittite kingdoms that will survive for another 5 centuries. But these are shadows of the empire, small city-states that preserve fragments of the culture. The great empire, the power that challenged Egypt, the kingdom that invented ironworking and wrote peace treaties, it is gone. And then something even stranger happens. The world forgets. Chapter 16. The 3,000-Year Mystery. For 3,000 years, the Hittites exist only as footnotes. The Bible mentions them occasionally. Genesis lists Hittites among the peoples of Canaan. King David's warrior Uriah is described as Uriah the Hittite. But who were they? Where was their kingdom? When did they live? No one knew. No one could say. Egyptian texts mentioned wars with Hatti, but scholars assumed this was just another minor Syrian kingdom. Assyrian records spoke of Neo-Hittite kingdoms, but these were small city-states, nothing impressive. The idea of a great empire that rivaled Egypt, that fought Ramesses to a standstill, that controlled Anatolia for centuries, it seemed impossible. It seemed like myth. Throughout the 1800s, European travelers to Turkey occasionally found strange inscriptions carved on rocks. The writing was hieroglyphic, but not Egyptian. No one could read it. No one knew what language it represented. Then, in 1906, a German archaeologist named Hugo Winkler began excavating a site in central Turkey called Boğazköy. Local farmers had found clay tablets there. Winkler hoped to find something interesting. He found an empire. Chapter 17. The Discovery. The ruins at Boğazköy were massive. City walls stretching for miles, palace foundations covering acres, temple complexes with dozens of rooms, and tablets, thousands of tablets. Most were in cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing of Mesopotamia. But the language was unknown. Winkler worked frantically. Each day brought new discoveries. Each tablet revealed more of the mystery. Then he found something extraordinary. A clay tablet containing a treaty. The same treaty that was carved on Egyptian temple walls. The treaty between Ramesses II and the Hittites. In that moment, Winkler realized he had found Hattusa. He had found the capital of the lost empire. Scholars rushed to decipher the language. It took years. A Czech linguist named Bedřich Hrozný finally cracked it in 1915. He realized the language was Indo-European, related to Greek, Latin, Sanskrit. It was the oldest written Indo-European language ever discovered. Suddenly, thousands of tablets could be read, and a lost civilization emerged from silence. We learned about kings named Suppiluliuma and Mursili. We read prayers to the storm god. We found diplomatic letters, legal codes, religious rituals, military annals. We discovered that the Hittites were not a minor people, they were a superpower. They had challenged Egypt and survived. They had invented ironworking. They had written the world's first peace treaty, and history had simply forgotten them. Chapter 18. What the Ruins Tell Us. The ruins of Hattusa still stand today, high in the Turkish mountains. You can walk through the massive gates, the Lion Gate with its carved stone lions, the King's Gate with its warrior god relief. You can see the great temple complex, covering over 3 acres, once home to the storm god and sun goddess. You can climb to the upper city, where massive rock formations were carved into open-air sanctuaries. The most famous is Yazilikaya, a natural rock chamber with walls carved with gods and goddesses, an entire pantheon frozen in stone. The carvings show something profound about Hittite religion. The Hittites worshipped thousands of gods. Every conquered people brought their gods, and the Hittites accepted them all. The storm god was supreme, yes. The sun goddess was his consort. But beside them stood Mesopotamian gods, Hurrian gods, even Babylonian deities. The Hittites called it the 1,000 gods of Hatti. This religious tolerance, so different from later empires, reveals something about Hittite imperial strategy. They did not try to erase conquered cultures, they absorbed them. The archaeological evidence shows a sophisticated civilization. Hittite artisans created beautiful pottery, intricate metalwork, impressive sculptures. Their architects built palaces with indoor plumbing, drainage systems, elaborate ventilation. Their scribes were literate, not just in Hittite, but in multiple languages. They kept detailed records of everything, and they were surprisingly humane, at least by Bronze Age standards. The law codes show punishments that, while harsh, were often proportional. Death penalty existed but was relatively rare, reserved for serious crimes like rape or bestiality or striking one's own father. Most crimes were punished with fines or restitution. There are even laws protecting women's rights. Women could own property, conduct business, and in some cases, divorce their husbands. This was not equality, not by modern standards, but it was progressive for 1500 BCE. Chapter 19. The Legacy, written in iron. But perhaps the greatest Hittite legacy is iron. When their empire collapsed, their ironworking secrets spread across the ancient world like wildfire. Within 2 centuries, iron weapons and tools were everywhere. Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia. The Bronze Age ended. The Iron Age began. Iron was democratic in a way bronze never was. Bronze required rare tin, controlled by merchant networks and royal monopolies. Iron ore was common, found in most regions. A farmer could own iron tools. A common soldier could wield an iron sword. Power became slightly less centralized. Warfare changed. Agriculture improved. The Hittites may have fallen, but their innovation transformed the world. And there is another legacy, less tangible, but equally important. The idea of diplomacy. Before the Egyptian-Hittite treaty, international relations were simple. You conquered or were conquered. You dominated or submitted. The treaty established something revolutionary. That 2 great powers could be equals, that peace could be negotiated with honor on both sides. Every peace treaty since, including the ones that end our modern wars, owes something to that silver tablet agreed upon 3,300 years ago. Chapter 20. Why they were forgotten. But this raises the haunting question: why were they forgotten? How does a superpower that lasted 5 centuries simply vanish from human memory? Part of the answer is geographical. Hattusa was remote. After the empire fell, no major civilization arose in central Anatolia for centuries. The region became a backwater, controlled by various powers, but never central to any. The ruins sat abandoned, gradually buried by time. Part of the answer is linguistic. When the Hittite Empire collapsed, their writing system disappeared with it. Unlike Egypt, where hieroglyphs continued, or Mesopotamia, where cuneiform survived, Hittite cuneiform was forgotten. No one could read the tablets. They became meaningless marks on clay. Without readable records, there was no way to remember. Part of the answer is cultural. The civilizations that remembered history, the Greeks, the Romans, the medieval scholars, had no direct connection to the Hittites. Greek civilization arose after the Bronze Age collapse. They inherited myths and legends, but not historical memory. The Bible preserved the name Hittite, but only as one people among many in Canaan, not as a great empire. And part of the answer is simply time. 3,000 years is a long time. Empires rise and fall, languages die, cities crumble, memory fades. If not for those clay tablets, baked hard by the fires that destroyed Hattusa, we might never have known the truth. Chapter 21. The Lessons in the Ruins. Stand in the ruins of Hattusa today, and you feel the weight of time. These massive walls once protected a thriving capital. These stones were carved by craftsmen who took pride in their work. These temples heard prayers in a language forgotten for millennia, and then, in a single generation, it all ended. What does this teach us? First, nothing is permanent. The Hittites seemed invincible. They had superior technology, efficient government, strong defenses. They defeated Egypt. They mastered iron, and they vanished. Every empire, no matter how strong, is vulnerable to forces beyond its control: climate change, migration, systemic collapse. Second, systems failure is catastrophic. The Bronze Age world was highly interconnected. Trade networks linked Egypt, Hatti, Mycenae, Mesopotamia. When those networks failed, the collapse was not gradual. It was rapid and total. Our modern world is even more interconnected. We should not assume we are immune to cascading failures. Third, cultural preservation matters. The Hittites were forgotten because their writing system died. Their language disappeared. Their cities were abandoned. What we preserve, in records, in memory, in archives, determines what survives. Digital data seems permanent, but it is fragile. Servers fail. Formats become obsolete. Without active preservation, our own civilization could become as mysterious to future archaeologists as the Hittites were to us. Fourth, peace requires effort. The Egyptian-Hittite peace treaty was not inevitable. It required leaders willing to compromise, to see former enemies as equals, to choose stability over glory. That peace gave both empires decades of prosperity. When it finally ended, not through war but through mutual collapse, both sides lost. Conflict is easy. Peace requires wisdom. Fifth, innovation spreads. The Hittites tried to keep ironworking secret. They failed. When their empire fell, the knowledge spread. This is the nature of transformative technology. You cannot monopolize it forever. Eventually, it belongs to the world. The question is, will you shape how it spreads, or will chaos do it for you? Chapter 22. The Ghosts in the Mountain. There is something haunting about visiting Hattusa. The site is empty now, just ruins on a windswept plateau. Tourists are few. The modern Turkish village nearby is small, but if you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. The sound of bronze wheels on stone streets, the bleating of sacrificial animals being led to temples, the chanting of priests in a language no living person speaks, the shouts of messengers arriving with news from Egypt, from Syria, from the frontier, the hammering of smiths working iron in carefully guarded forges, the prayers of a king begging the storm god to end a plague, the triumphant return of an army from a successful campaign. All of it happened here. All of it is gone. The Hittites left behind questions we cannot fully answer. What happened in the final days? Did the last king die defending his city, or did he flee into the mountains, dying alone in exile? Did the people know their civilization was ending, or did they assume it was just another crisis, like the ones their ancestors survived? When the fires burned and the tablets baked and the temples collapsed, did anyone think future generations will forget us entirely? We will never know. But perhaps that is fitting. Perhaps mystery is part of their legacy. They remind us that even the greatest civilizations can become lost, that knowledge can be buried, that memory can fail. And they remind us that sometimes, with luck and effort, the lost can be found again. Epilogue: The Empire that Returned. The Hittites were forgotten for 3,000 years. And then, in one generation of archaeological work, they returned, not as a living civilization, that can never be, but as a presence in human memory, as a chapter in our shared story. We now know their kings' names, we have read their prayers, we understand their laws, we have walked through their palaces and temples. We know they were real, they were powerful, they mattered. And in a strange way, this gives them a kind of immortality. The empire fell, the cities burned, the language died, but the story survived, waiting in clay tablets for someone to read it again. The Hittites teach us something profound about civilization. It is not about duration, how long you last. The Hittites lasted 5 centuries, the Romans lasted longer, the Egyptians even longer still, but all of them ended. What matters is impact, what you create, what you discover, what you leave behind. The Hittites created ironworking that changed the world. They wrote treaties that established diplomatic principles still used today. They built a multi-ethnic empire that tolerated diverse cultures and religions. They were not perfect. They were often brutal. They kept slaves. They waged wars. But they were also sophisticated, innovative, and in their own way, visionary. And now, pulled from the silence of history, they have their place in the story of human civilization. Practical lessons from the Hittite story. 1. Geographic advantage matters, but it is not everything. The Hittites built their capital in a difficult location for defense. It protected them for centuries, but it also isolated them when the empire needed connections to survive. 2. Succession crises destroy empires. The Hittites never solved the problem of peaceful power transfer. The constant assassinations, usurpations, and civil wars weakened them at critical moments. Clear rules for succession are not just procedural, they are existential. 3. Technological advantage is temporary. The Hittites monopolized ironworking for generations, but they could not keep it forever. Adapt to the reality that others will catch up and prepare for what comes next. 4. Interconnected systems are vulnerable. The Bronze Age collapse shows what happens when complex, interdependent civilizations face systemic shocks. Resilience requires some level of independence, not just efficiency. 5. Preservation is not automatic. The Hittites were forgotten because nothing actively preserved their memory. What we choose to record and maintain determines what survives. Archives matter. Documentation matters. Memory requires work. Personally, what moves me most about the Hittites is their resilience. They were forgotten for 3 millennia. Truly, completely forgotten. And yet, when the clay tablets were finally read, when the ruins were finally excavated, the civilization returned to us. It makes me wonder, what else have we lost? What other civilizations vanished so completely that we do not even know their names? And what will future archaeologists think when they dig through our ruins? The Hittites remind us to be humble. We are not as permanent as we think. Good night. If this story touched you, if you learned something you never knew, if you felt the strange melancholy of a lost civilization remembered, then please subscribe. Share this with someone who loves history. Tell me in the comments, what surprised you most? What do you think caused the final collapse? The night speaks, and the voices of the past are waiting to be heard. Sleep well.
Subscribe if you wanna see us again. Oh, subscribe.